Hello, we are reading Oliver Twist, and we are on Chapter 7. Mr. Bumble brings disappointing news. While Oliver was forced back into Fagin's den, Mr. Bumble, the parish official of the workhouse where Oliver had spent his early days, had taken some time off from the workhouse and was going to London to attend to a legal problem. As he emerged from the workhouse gate early in the morning, he walked with a portly carriage and commanding steps up to High Street. He reached the workhouse where Mrs. Mann was. After he paid her monthly stipend and told her he was going to London, Mr. Bumble inquired about the orphans. "They are as well as they can be, the dears. Of course, except the two who died last week and little Dick. I'll bring him to you in a minute, sir," said Mrs. Mann. Mrs. Mann wanted to bring Dick, as he was weak and dying and had something he wanted to say. Mrs. Mann called Dick, and the child came. He was pale and thin, his cheeks were sunken, his eyes were large and bright, and his young limbs were weak, like that of a frail old man. Trembling, he told Mr. Bumble, "I would like somebody to write for me a few words on a piece of paper and seal it and keep it after I am dead and buried." "What does the boy mean?" "I should like to leave my love for poor Oliver Twist and tell him how often I have sat at night and cried thinking about his wanderings in the dark night with no one to help him." "They are all alike. I can't bear the sight of him. Take him away. This must be stated to the board," mumbled Mr. Bumble, disgusted with orphans and their love and sympathy for one another. Mr. Bumble left. Dick was taken to the coal cellar and locked up for having said words that offended Mr. Bumble. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Bumble arrived in London. As he came across a tavern by the road, he read the following advertisement: 5 guineas reward to anyone with information leading to the young boy Oliver Twist, who either ran away or was kidnapped from his home last week. The money will go to any person who finds Oliver who gives information about his past. A description of Oliver's appearance and Mr. Brownlow's address were printed on the paper. He went straight to Mr. Brownlow's house. Mr. Brownlow and Mr. Grimwig were sitting, drinking tea. Mr. Bumble reported all that he seemed to know about Oliver's background. Oliver had been born of low parentage. While he grew up in a workhouse, we always found him to be an evil and ungrateful child. Wow. He had a violent temper and attacked a boy who hardly had done anything wrong to him. He also ran away from the workhouse in the middle of the night. Mr. Bumble presented the legal papers to prove that he knew Oliver. Mr. Brownlow was extremely sad to hear that Oliver's parents were not good people. Even though the boy had not returned, he had not lost faith in him completely, for he still had a feeling that there had been a kind of innocence in his character. He might have been kidnapped, or something might have happened to him on the road. I don't know what that is. Some weird bug. Mr. Brownlow had thought, now that he had to believe everything bad about Oliver, that his parents were not good people, that he had been evil and violent and had troubled the workhouse masters, Mr. Brownlow had to admit deep within himself that his own judgment about the boy may have been wrong. He was very unhappy. With a sad gesture, he handed the 5 guineas to Mr. Bumble. "Thank you for coming," he told Mr. Bumble. "Here are the 5 guineas. I only wish your report of Oliver had been more favorable. He was such a dear, kind, gentle child," Mrs. Bedwin said. Mr. Brownlow was sad, but he said, "Think what you want, Mrs. Bedwin. It is hard to believe what Mr. Bumble said to me, but I am so disappointed with that boy that you are never to mention his name in this house again." Mr. Grimwig said, "I always knew he was a bad boy." And that is the end of Chapter 7.